The Martyrdom of Man by Winwood Reade. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Algy Pug. Section 0. Author's Preface. In 1862 to 1863 I made a tour in West Africa, and afterwards desired to revisit that strange country with the view of opening up new ground and studying religion and morality among the natives. I was, however, unable to bear a second time the great expenses of African travel, and had almost given up the hope of becoming an explorer, when I was introduced by Mr. Bates, the well-known Amazon traveller and secretary of the Royal Geographical Society, to one of its associates, Mr. Andrew Swansea, who had long desired to do something in the cause of African discovery. He placed unlimited means at my disposal, and left me free to choose my own route. I travelled in Africa for 2 years, 1868 to 1870, and made a journey which is mentioned in the text. The narrative of my travels will be published in due course. I allude to them now in order to show that I have had some personal experience of savages. I wish also to take the first opportunity of thanking Mr. Swansea for his assistance, which was given not only in the most generous but also in the most graceful manner. With respect to the present work, I began it intending to prove that Negro Land, or Inner Africa, is not cut off from the main stream of events, as writers of philosophical history have always maintained, but connected by means of Islam with the lands of the East, and also that it has, by means of the slave trade, powerfully influenced the moral history of Europe and the political history of the United States. But I was gradually led from writing the history of Africa into writing the history of the world. I could not describe the Negro land of ancient times without describing Egypt and Carthage. From Egypt I was drawn to Asia and to Greece. From Carthage I was drawn to Rome. That is the first chapter. Next, having to relate the progress of the Mohammedans in Central Africa, it was necessary for me to explain the nature and origin of Islam. But that religion cannot be understood without a study of religion among savages. That is the second chapter. Thirdly, I sketched the history of the slave trade, which took me back to the discoveries of the Portuguese, the glories of Venetian commerce, the revival of the arts, the Dark Ages, and the invasion of the Germans. Thus finding that my outline of universal history was almost complete, I determined, in the last chapter, to give a brief summary of the whole, filling up the parts omitted, and adding to it the materials of another work suggested several years ago by The Origin of Species. One of my reasons for revisiting Africa was to collect materials for this work, which I had intended to call The Origin of Mind. However, Mr. Darwin's Descent of Man has left little for me to say respecting the birth and infancy of the faculties and affections. I therefore merely follow in his footsteps, not from blind veneration for a great master, but because I find that his conclusions are confirmed by the phenomena of savage life. On certain minor points I venture to dissent from Mr. Darwin's views, as I shall show in my personal narrative, and there is probably much in this work of which Mr. Darwin will disapprove. He must therefore not be made responsible for all the opinions of his disciple. I had intended to give my authorities in full with notes and elucidations, but am prevented from doing so by want of space, this volume being already larger than it should be. I wish therefore to impress upon the reader that there is scarcely anything in this work which I can claim as my own. I have taken not only facts and ideas, but phrases and even paragraphs from other writers. I cannot pay all my debts in full, but I must at least do myself the pleasure of mentioning those authors who have been my chief guides. On Egypt they are Wilkinson, Herodotus (Rawlinson's edition), Bunsen; Ethiopia or Abyssinia, Bruce, Baker, Lepsius; Carthage, Heron.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?